Hi, I want to ask you today, have you eaten the food of champions before? Because if you haven't, then you need to stay tuned and watch the entire video. And I'm not talking about Atkins diet or whether you're a vegan or whether you are, I don't know, there's so many different diets out there. I'm not talking about dieting, I'm talking about the food of champions, which is otherwise known as feedback. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, let me introduce myself because I'm Shola Kaye. I'm a communication consultant, a professional speaker, and also a speaker coach based in London with clients around the world. And in today's video, I want to ask you about feedback. Are you regularly asking for feedback from the people who are seeing you speak? Whether that's your audience members or whether it's the person who brought you in to speak to their group. Because if you aren't, you are missing out on some, well, I wouldn't say not necessarily delicious, but you're missing out on some nutritious food that is going to help you to grow big and strong as a speaker. Now, why is feedback called the food of champions? Well, if you look at anybody who's at the top of their game, pretty much without exception, they have got there with the help of a coach, with the help of somebody who has worked with them to get them better. And that is why it's the food of champions. Whether you're looking at somebody who's a successful business owner or somebody who's a successful sports person, they will without doubt have had some sort of coaching or assistance or mentoring along the way. I'm working with the CEO of an international company at the moment. He is eager to gobble up this food of champions, and I'm sure that's partly why he's been so successful. And he's very keen for me to watch his speeches, to critique them, to give him feedback that's going to help him get better. And it's very easy for us to say, well, I'm at a decent enough level now. I don't want to hear any more feedback. I'm okay, thank you very much. But this will stunt your growth. And in the same way, eating a poor diet will stop you from being healthy. If you don't have the nutrition of regular feedback, then it will stop you from being the best speaker that you can possibly be. So what are some of the reasons that we would typically stop ourselves from getting feedback or from asking for feedback? Well, first of all, it could be that your ego is feeling a little bit delicate around getting feedback that may not all be glowing. What I suggest is that when you enter the restaurant of champions, you check your ego at the door and you say, I'll pick you up on the way out, because it's not helpful to be too fragile about the feedback that you receive. Sometimes you've got to have a little bit of a thick skin and be ready to take it on the chin, right? Because if you can do that and then apply what you've learned, obviously being judicious, because sometimes people may not have the best feedback for you, but if you can recognize that something that you're being told is worth implementing, then don't worry about the ego. Just think about where you're going to be after you've implemented this great piece of advice and go for it. Now, another reason that we may not implement feedback is that we're so busy getting a second, a third, a fourth, a 10th opinion that we end up just spending our time soliciting advice that we don't implement. And that's similar to the sort of person who might read tons of books on personal development and is just addicted to the reading of the books without actually implementing any of the advice. And sometimes I'm like that. I love reading, I love personal development, and I have to stop myself sometimes and say, hold on a sec, before you read the next book, let's just summarize this one. Let's take, say, 3 to 5 great things that you can apply, and let's do that before we run on to the next book. And in the same way, it's very easy to say, well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then we get so overwhelmed with all these tips and pieces of advice that we implement barely any of them. So that's another barrier to actually consuming this food of champions and letting it help us to grow and improve. So I hope you are convinced at why it's important to get feedback. A few weeks ago, I created a podcast, a vlog here, on how you can actually assess your own speeches and some questions you can ask yourself to help yourself get better. But in addition to that, you don't want to be limited just by your own assessment of your work. You want to go wider than that and ask audience members, as I say, people who book you, even get recordings and then ask other people, have a bit of a watch party at home or something, put yourself on the TV and ask other people to give you some feedback, because it's all incredibly helpful. And there might be a little bit of advice or a little tip someone gives you that can make the world of difference in your next presentation. So that's it from me today. Make sure you keep eating, or if you haven't eaten yet, make sure you eat from the plate of champions, which is getting as much feedback as you possibly can. And I will see you for the next video or podcast. Take care. Bye.